Today's guest is Helen Little. You wrote to me, Helen, one of my preferred topics is resilience. Success, leadership, growth, and expansion all require resiliency. That you credit a lot of your journey with being able to move forward, to get back up when you stumbled or encountered a roadblock. I love that because this is the Rebound live webcast, and the Rebound is all about rebounding from setbacks and failures. As a Black woman, knowing the path that you chose, where I wanted my life and career to go, required me to work twice as hard as many of my peers and counterparts, is something that can provide insight into our conversation. Let's start there. Tell us of a time you got knocked down and how you rebounded.
Well, one of the ones that first comes to mind was earlier in my career. I had a run-in with a consultant at one of the radio stations. I was working in Charlotte, and I had just got my first full-time on-air job at an FM station. I was so excited. I moved from Raleigh to Charlotte, and I was closer to home because I'm from Salisbury. And the consultant comes into the studio one day, and I'm, in a great mood. And he says to me, "I don't know why they hired you. You don't sound like nothing." And I wanted to correct him, say, I don't sound like anything, but I didn't. But I was devastated. I mean, to have someone who has an influence over the people that you work for or with the people that you work for, to have them say that to you, when you're pouring your heart into what you do, when you pull all your passion to try to succeed in a field, and to have someone say that to you could be devastating. I could have walked away and never returned to the radio microphone again. But I did.
What did you do?
I cried. I cried. I went to my boss's office, and I thought I was losing my job. And I'm like, "I really want this job." He's like, "What are you talking about?" And I told him what happened. He says, "You don't work for him. You work for me. And I hired you, and I believe in you." And that made all the difference. So fast forward a good 25 years, I run into the same consultant, and I'm now working in New York. And I had to remind him of that, but I thanked him. I said, "Thank you, because you really motivated me to reach the levels I have in my career, because I never wanted to be confronted with something like that again." He apologized because he's like, I didn't even think about what I was saying at the time. I'm like, I realized that. I said, but to be honest, it really motivated me to climb higher.
Wow, there's so much to unpack there. I love it. One thing that comes right to mind is the support of your boss.
Yes.
Everyone needs confidence. I don't care how old you are. That consultant, whether he meant it or not, saying I didn't know what I said or something like that. The power of words, when you are the boss and you have the leverage, a word here or there can really rock someone's world. So choose your words wisely. His comment, he might be from Long Island, be sarcastic, and thought he was kind of being funny. And he offended you. And if you didn't take that and show some internal fortitude, you could have quit right there and went back to Raleigh.
Yep.
Where do you get your toughness from? Granted you cried. Okay, we all want to cry sometimes, but you still went forward. Where does that come from?
I think I initially got that from my family, from growing up in a large family. I'm 5 out of 6, the 5th child out of 6 kids. My parents really pushed us to excel. I tell people a lot of times my career was born out of the lessons I got from my parents. It was very important. Like you had to speak properly, you had to enunciate, you had to know your grammar, you would get called on the carpet. So I took all of that and turned it into a career of talking to people. But toughness starts, I think for me at home. And another thing was, I work in a very male-dominated field, and growing up, I was a tomboy, so I played with boys. I stood toe to toe with, I still do, with the boys, and I always felt like I could do anything they could do. And like in my family and in the new world, I saw the privileges that males get and got. Like the boys in my family didn't have to wash dishes. I'm like, why do I have to wash dishes? And so I was willing to stand up for myself. I was willing to realize that I can do anything that I set my mind to, and it has nothing to do with anything other than that tenacity. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to face roadblocks. Other people aren't going to see me that way. Right. But as long as I see myself as someone who is capable and can succeed and has all the tools and everything I need to do whatever job it is I set out to do, then that's the beginning of my success.
Gotcha. Love it. Love it. I just, Stephanie, do we have this it on speaker view when you're filming? Okay, cool. All right. I like to see everyone's faces because I love to see reactions, and then I pick on people. Like Sandy's smiling right now. I might pick on her sometime soon. The other thing, going back to that consultant, it's either Oprah Winfrey or Robin Roberts said, it doesn't happen to you, it happens for you.
For you.
And so that's the mindset it takes to overcome setbacks, because sometimes we think, oh, woe is me. Why did that happen to me? But it happened for you. And you said you used it as motivation. Going back to how do you develop that? That's a toughness, but it's a mindset. Mm-hmm. And I think that you have to have that champion's mindset to fight through those setbacks. And again, you explained where you got a lot of that from. Touching on your parents, growing up as a young Black girl in Salisbury, North Carolina, I don't want to divulge your age, but you and I were in school together. I'm
proud of my age.
Okay, so, all right. I love your beautiful gray hair, by the way.
And yours.
Yeah, thank you. I was hoping you would come back with that. That's why I fed that line. What was it like growing up as a young Black girl in the South in the 60s and 70s?
I had amazing parents. So they taught us optimism and opportunity, but I dealt with the things that a lot of young Black people dealt with in the South, being called names, being not able to go to certain people's homes. I recall very young, my sister and I were walking home with one of, I think it was her classmates, and we were told we couldn't come in the house because the landlord didn't allow us to come into the house because of the color of our skin. And, it was bizarre to us, but it was like, okay, because our house is nicer than yours, but that's neither here nor there. But that's just the truth. Yes. So, there's nothing like having that foundation of people that believe in you, but more than anything else, you got to believe in yourself. And that's what I think we were taught very young. So, even as you deal with, being other, being different, being Black, being female, as long as you can step into your own power and your own strength and know who you are and believe in who you are, that's where it begins. You have to start there. It's interesting. I've been watching a lot of Me TV, which is like old television programs. And as I watch them now as an adult, and I don't see me in any of these shows. We were watching Adam 12 last night, and I'm like, there's not one Black person in this show. It's like, so when you don't grow up and see yourself, it's a lot harder to see yourself being something. And to this day, being in the radio business, you couldn't see anybody that was on radio, so I didn't know. But I chose something that I was passionate about, even as a child. And, I spent more time with the radio than with anything I did, whether it was television, studying, reading. I absolutely loved listening to the radio. There was a song in the 70s by Helen called Angie Baby. And it's about this crazy girl listen to the radio so much she ends up inside the radio. And my sister used to call me Angie Baby. And I'm like, one day that's going to be the title of my memoir, Angie Baby, because I did end up inside the radio. But, you know, it's
Wow.
seeing the possibilities, not letting anyone else tell you you cannot do something, and believing in yourself.
What I love that. That's awesome. Angie Baby, you got a new nickname. Staying on the topic of a Black woman growing up, girl, to now becoming a Black woman in business. Tell me of a time you felt marginalized as a Black woman in business, and how did you rebound from that?
One of the things that comes to mind was so crazy to me at the time that, I mean, it's always crazy, but I was actually working in the record business at this time. I was the president of an independent label based out of Philadelphia that was a part of Warner Brothers. So we had all different kinds of acts. We had hip hop and R&B, but we also had, you know, heavy metal and hard rock. So we had a hard rock band that was playing in Baltimore, and I went down with them because I had the credit card to cover all their expenses. And so it was some little dive bar in Baltimore, and they did their show, and they're breaking down their instruments, and the bar's closing, and I'm there with my sister, and we're sitting at the bar, and the bouncer comes over and tells me, we're closed, you gotta go. I said, oh, I'm with the band. He goes, you are so not with the band. And I was like, excuse me? I said, I'm paying your salary tonight. I was like, I am the president of the company that this band is signed to. I will have you know. So I will leave when I'm good and ready. And, you know, I was like, that to me you can see I was a little bit angry then. I've still got some of that anger in me now. But yeah, I'm like, excuse me? You know, I literally was paying his salary that night.
Right.
Because we had rented this place for a showcase.
Right. All right. I love doing deep dives, and I'm going to hopefully ask some tough questions that I think we need to discuss. Like on this webcast, I want diversity, and I want to ask questions that people are thinking but are afraid to ask.
Okay.
I'm a 60-year-old white guy. What do you tell me and my peers that we need to know? That you know, you think of those, that mind, you think of, we talk about mindset, you think about approaching you in that bar. How can we be better and not marginalize people of color or women or, you know, whatever? How can we become more aware, more sensitive? How can we become better?
I think it begins with asking questions, but asking questions from a place of, I really do want to know this. Pardon me if I seem ignorant, but I'm just trying to learn. I'm trying to be better. So asking questions, but seeing people in the first place. You know, when you actually see another human being, like see them, not just the outside, but like see into who they are and learn about them. One of the things that's so interesting to me, going from North Carolina, I went to Dallas, Texas before I went to New York. And North Carolina, I grew up there. I knew everything, you know, it's in my DNA. When I got to Texas, life was very different. That was my first time encountering a Hispanic community, because when I left North Carolina, there was a small one, but not really. But there's a very dominant community in Dallas, Texas, and I learned a lot about their culture and their holidays and their foods and the things that they eat and the things that they do, and I was very fascinated by that. Then when I go to New York, where everybody's from somewhere different, and I've always been a fan of learning about other people's cultures and experiencing their foods and their holidays and their customs and their traditions. So it's like, one of the things I've always had to answer questions about is my hair. Is it real? I'm like, first of all, that's a rude question. Second of all, why is it important? And then like, how do I do it? I've always gotten a lot of questions about hair, not uncommon for Black women, so it becomes tiring at sometimes when there's questions that you get asked over and over. But when you come from a place of, I'm being genuine, I'm being earnest, I really just want to know, because I want to be better. Not so much that I'm curious, but I'd like to be better in terms of being able to interact with people that aren't like me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that answer. We have a question from really my top advisor on the Rebound Live webcast, Brian Moran, in Hohokus, New Jersey. Originally from Long Island, Rockville Center. Brian, did you shave your beard and keep the mustache, or do you have still the beard going on?
I still have the beard. I just shaved it down, and that thing grows faster than anything. So
okay, got it.
I got it.
All right.
Hohokus is beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. I love it. It's a tiny town and an old town, but it's where I've been for almost the last 30 years, raised my family. Well, Helen, I want to thank you for being on the show today, because I always learn, like you do, when I hear people who are from different parts of the country, grew up differently. I think what I try and do is erase my unconscious bias. But like you, I was the fifth of 7 children.
Wow.
There were 6 boys and a girl. And when I tell you that we were the marginalized part of my family, the boys, my sister was second oldest, my mom, 2 extremely tough women, and they made sure we stayed in line. That toilet seat always went down. So that's one thing. But, you raise a couple of really good points. And, my parents, like it sounds like yours, really raised their kids to understand, that if we believe in God, that God made all people, that we need to understand different people in the world. They are different from us. We can learn from them. That's why God made them different, so that we can learn. But, and you and I are close in age. I think the way, the time that we grew up in and the time now, this conversation is about resiliency.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of things have changed, but a lot of things have gotten better. They're not where they need to be, but they're certainly closer. We're much more of an understanding society. I'd like to think, even though, let's leave out the politics, but the humanity, I think, is people are much more aware of each other. Given that, how does one maintain, or how does...
Let me interrupt. I want to interrupt. Do you agree with that statement, Helen?
About humanity?
Yes, we're much more understanding. I mean, there's assumptions there as a, that's what he sees. But as a Black woman, do you see that?
I will say that there is an improvement, but I think I don't even think it's politics. I think there is definitely a sense of division just in our country alone that strains that. So I think that there's a strong wave and movement for those like Brian and what he spoke of, and then there are those that have no clue that exist. So you have to navigate that water, and it's, sometimes you see humanity and sometimes you don't.
Yeah. So that's a great point. So let me rephrase that. There's an awareness of all of the things that are wrong in our country, right? That you didn't see 20, 30, 40 years ago. And again, that's how unconscious bias grew, right? We didn't understand. We don't know what we don't know. I never walked in your shoes nor have you walked in mine. I think that today, as we start to have these uncomfortable conversations, we start to realize just how wrong things have been in our society and how do we fix them. But my question is this, that there are hundreds of stories about butterflies, right? And the way a butterfly gains its strength through the cocoon and has to muscle its way out, but in doing so, strengthens its wings so it can fly. But if you help the butterfly, it retains all that water and liquid in its wings, and it falls to the ground and it can't fly. So the question is, as we become a more understanding society and we accept people, and what happens to that resiliency? What happens? I guess the question is, where's the pushback, and how do people become more resilient?
I'm not quite sure, based on your analogy, that I understand your question, but so the butterfly, this is where I got hung up.
All
and
right.
I think about a butterfly being able to push through. If you think of it as us in our society, some of those cocoons didn't even get the opportunity to form because we weren't even given the cocoon, in some situations. So, that's, I guess, natural order. But when it comes to opportunity and resiliency, that's kind of a hard analogy to compare it to.
So let me give you a different one then. The fairness trophies. So Matt and I grew up on Long Island. We both played sports, very, very competitive. You only got a trophy if you won. In rare instances, at the highest level, you were given a second place trophy. I don't know any kid that ever kept a second place trophy. Somehow along the way, people said, everybody gets a trophy. And it was as if, well, I don't really need to try anymore because, well, here's my trophy. I'll never forget a kid that showed up. I was coaching my kids in sports. I didn't see this kid the entire year. I just assumed he was on another team. He shows up at the very last day and I said, who are you? He says, I'm so-and-so. And I said, oh, I haven't seen you all year. He said, yeah, but I hear you're handing out trophies today. A true story. And I said to him, you're not getting one. You're not getting one. And the mother came up and she complained. And I said, he didn't show up all year. He wasn't here. I'm going to give the trophy to the commissioner. If he wants to give it to your son, he can give it to him. But you're setting a bad example.
Yeah, and that is a lack of resiliency, if you ask me, because what do you have? What has that child learned?
Exactly.
What has he experienced? Yeah. So I think that it comes from a good place that people want to help you get somewhere. My parents wanted me to do better than them. Your parents wanted you to do better than them.
Yeah.
And, but they didn't hand it to us. And I think that, I don't know if it's our generation, the generation after us, that, we resented the fact that our parents made us work for this. So we're going to give it to our kids. Mm-hmm. And it's created a dynamic in the workplace. If you're my age and you're working with someone who has never had to deal with resiliency, to create a bridge, so to speak, of maybe helping them learn some of that. I just saw an old show. I'm telling you, I've been watching old TV, and it was Andy Griffin. Mm-hmm. And it was funny. Bill Bixby was a guest star, but he was a kid, and he was this rich kid with a fancy car, and his dad was going to come bail him out of jail. And his dad came to bail him out of jail, but he had watched Andy with Opie and decided he didn't want to be bailed out. He wanted to do his time and learn the hard way. That doesn't necessarily happen, but that's what needs to happen. So as I'm watching it, I'm thinking, oh, his dad's not going to bail him out. That's the moral of the story. But it wasn't. It was a kid decided he wanted to do the time and learn more from how Andy raised his son than to be given everything.
Let me take this. We have a lot of business owners on. Um, hiring talent is a problem, motivating talent, holding people accountable, people leaving, the great resignation. You touched on a couple of things. One, it seems like, and it sounds like the 60-year-old white male saying, kids these days, and you touched on it. I think a big part of this is how people are raised, and are they in a family unit that has some form of tough love. But how do you, as a business owner, upper management, hire people that have resiliency, or can you create resiliency in them to overcome some setbacks at work without them just wanting to quit? And now they have the leverage. The numbers show I can quit my job and go across the street. I'm not as emotionally connected. It's not like, oh, I'm working for good old, Light FM. I'm proud to wear that on your chest, and I'll take a beating, but I'm proud to be part of the team. Now doesn't seem to be that much anymore. How do you hire resilient people? How do you train to resiliency? How do you coach through that, Helen?
I think the beginning of it starts with passion. When you desire something, very little can stop you from wanting it and seeing that through. So I would always try to figure out what was the motivating factor of why this person wanted to work this job or on my team. What motivates you? And if, a lot of times they would come in, well, I want to do this because I want to make a lot of money. I'm like, so if money's your passion, you might want to work at a bank because that's their business. I said, our business is service. So we serve an audience. We serve our advertisers. If you want to serve, if you want to take that microphone and tell the community how you can either entertain them to make their day a little less stressful, or inform them so that they know something that they need to know, that's more of what I'm looking for than someone who's like, I want to check. We all want to check. But if you're passionate I would tell them, if you're passionate about money, go into banking or finance, because that's their business. Their business is money.
Now, let's take it though, radio is a little different, in my opinion. TV is a little different because there's some cachet with it. But if you own a company that prints T-shirts and you need people to print shirts and box them, not a glamorous job. They didn't grow up wanting to do that. They just need the money. They need to pay the rent. They, whatever it is, they need to support themselves. I think that's probably a little different challenge, and maybe you don't have some responses, maybe other people on the call do, because I think that's to find the average, I hate to say average worker, but somebody who's willing to come to work at a job that's not glamorous, punch the clock, show up, do a good job, deal with a little coaching from somebody, and finish the day strong, and then come back the next day and do it over and over and over again.
I have had those kinds of jobs as well. And, the thing that always kept me coming back, like I spent a lot of my early years while I was working in radio, working at a record store, different record stores. What kept me coming back was the environment, the people I worked with, the management, how they treated me, if I learned something. And I loved those crazy retail hours because I loved working around music. So maybe there's an artistic part of the T-shirt business that you love being around, or maybe it's knowing that you're providing something for someone else that makes you feel good inside.
Yeah. I love that. You loved learning something new. I think that's critical. Sometimes we look at people, and I'm I'm an executive coach, so I'm in continuing education. And nowadays the surveys say that the younger generation, if they don't feel growth, they don't feel like they're learning anything at 3 years, they're out. That's a big part of it. So Adam Zambruski, why don't you tell us a little bit, where you're from, what you do, and what's your comment or question for Helen?
Hi, Coach. Hi, Helen. Thanks for being here. You're really inspirational. Been taking a lot of notes. I am in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm in the hospitality industry. I probably more of a coach to hospitality real estate owners and property management companies, mostly in hotels, but with restaurants also. The comment that has been brought forward that Matt mentioned and that you just mentioned, Helen, and I was going to ask you, but you already answered. It relates to doing those jobs that no one really wants to do. And it reminded me of a quote that I heard, and I might be misquoting, but I think it's Zig Ziglar. He's a Texas guy, and I'm from New England, from a very tiny little town in southeastern Connecticut, near Rhode Island. And he said, you got to do, sorry, you have to be before you can do, and you got to do before you can have. And that has been the answer. That was told to me as a very young manager about 25 years ago at Foxwoods Casino, which is where I got my start when I was just graduated high school. And it just reminded me of the quote that somebody told me, "You're on toilets today." Right. So it's like, that just meant I was cleaning toilets all day. That's my job today. And he said, you will appreciate that, probably 10, 15 years from now, when you're asking someone to do that, you'll be able to say that you've done it, and you'll be able to help them, and you're not above that. And so it was more of a comment, and maybe someone wanted to comment on that also. But Helen, you mentioned that you're the fifth child out of six. I'm a baby. I just have one older brother. And as far as resiliency goes, I just found myself to be very fortunate and lucky to have supervisors that really kind of drove that into me. I grew up on a small little farm, but my dad was all about hard work. My mom was all about empathy for others. And so that provided a good deal of help in my career and also personally. And I was going to ask you about, you mentioned the record company and starting in a line level type position. But I wanted to just maybe ask you or anyone else on the call if you've had experiences like that, of like, you're on toilets today, and something that has stayed with you for, decades. And have you?
That's good question, Adam.
Yeah.
Helen, do you have a comment?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny.
Antoine, I'm just going to warn you, Antoine, I'm coming to you. I'm going to pass you the ball, and you're going to take the shot. Just be ready. I'm coming to you. You got thoughts. I know you got a thought. Go ahead, Helen.
So, I was talking about my experience in retail. So when we were in Chapel Hill, all I ever wanted to do was work at Record Bar. I loved Record Bar. Eventually, I did end up working at Record Bar. But when at all of the record stores that I worked at, all the retail, you were responsible for cleaning the toilets. The job wasn't just to ring up records or to talk about music to people. You also had to keep the place clean. You had to do everything. And there was a chart of what day was your day for bathrooms. If you're in Charlotte, well, you didn't grow up in Charlotte, you're from Connecticut, but there was a record store called Grapevine Records in Charlotte on Independence Boulevard. And it was the size of a furniture store. And my toilet day was a certain day of the week that I was responsible for cleaning the bathrooms. But I loved that job so much that it didn't make a difference. It was like, yeah, I get to clean the toilets today, because it was a situation where people came in and we talked about things that we both loved, which was music. Sometimes artists would come in to sign records. We sold concert tickets. That job was so much fun. And that's the key to anything, I think, in life that will create endurance. If you love what you're doing, whether that is cleaning toilets, because I do know people who like to clean, or talking to people about music and selling records, or being on the radio, or owning a business, whatever it is that you're passionate about, that is really what drives resiliency in the first place, because you love it. If you are really in love with whatever it is that you're doing, and you can find a way to love, because I haven't always loved everything, but when I find something within what I'm doing to love, it makes me want to be there. It's hard to clock out. I've had to teach myself how to clock out.
You're
Thank you, Helen. Thank you.
the
You're welcome.
passion and the energy, and I think a couple things. It goes back. We have, many of us have talked about our family units, and I'm the fourth of five. My brother, I tell him he was a mistake. He was 6 years beyond me. They Irish Catholic. The rhythm method's not real effective. My dad finally got the boy, 3 girls than me. I was the golden child. And then my brother comes along 6 years later. I'm like, what's up with this? And so I reminded him at meals, like, hey, John, shut up. You shouldn't even be talking. You shouldn't even be here. Like, you don't have opinion. Now, he is one of the toughest, most successful people I know. And I'd like to think I had a hand in his success, because I punish him on a regular basis. But we talk about, and that's missing in society, I believe. Trying to look at numbers the other day, actually, on the number of kids that grow up with single moms, single working moms. So that discipline, that toughness you got from your parents, Helen and Brian, and probably of many people on this call, doesn't seem to be there now as much.
I disagree. I think it's a lot tougher. I think it's a lot tougher to grow up in a single mom situation. I have one of my closest friends is a single mom.
Well, I didn't say it's not tougher, but I'm saying you might not be getting the lessons, like the resiliency of, hey, you've got to do this.
It's a different kind of resiliency that you get. And even though you may have that one parent, there is usually a village of people around you that are assisting that one parent, because you really cannot do it alone. Someone else is there to help, whether it's an uncle or a grandparent or a close neighbor. You'd be surprised what a family unit looks like these days, but you get the same results. They just don't have the same titles. And they help build that same kind of resiliency if you're fortunate enough to be surrounded by a great village. They don't always have to share your bloodline.
Well, I think the key is then, okay, great village. That's a great point. I love that perspective. I told Antoine I was going to throw him the ball. Now, Brian asked a question of Antoine in the chat about how do you build, let me see here, and hearing how companies can maintain a positive culture in today's upside down economy. Now, I don't know if you have an opinion on that, Antoine, but you're kind of new to the show. You and I connect on social media, and you look like you were contemplating a thought. So what's your thought? Chime in. You got the ball. Don't turn it over, Antoine. Don't turn it over.
I promise I won't. I appreciate it. First, I wanted to tell Helen I actually live in Salisbury.
Oh, cool.
So, I can relate to that. And to Adam, I spent 22 years in the private club industry, a predominantly white dominated industry, male dominated industry. And having to go through starting out as a broiler cook and working my way all the way up to a general manager position, I had to deal with a lot and had to find a lot of resiliency to make it to where I got to. But I think the point I wanted to go back to when we're talking about young people, and I'm gonna probably maybe make some people shake a little bit. I hear a lot of comments, and I've seen a lot of comments about the entitlement of younger people. That is the narrative that we're all talking about. The narrative needs to be shifted as what we are going to do to change that. And that's what I do. I'm a youth coach and mentor. So when I work with kids, I talk about how to change that narrative, and that's what they want to hear. So when we talk about culture, it's connecting with the younger generation so that we can listen to what they have to say, so that we can shift it so that they can be successful and progress in the working industry. They don't hear enough. They don't get enough compassion, because we are the experienced people and we all think we know. And when in reality, we all have to stop. We are not growing up in the generation that they're growing up in. We've had our time. So at some point, we have to compromise our beliefs to understand where they are, so that we can help them progress. And I think that that's a lot of what people miss. And that's what I wanted to interject. Thank you.
Wow, I tell you what, I passed the ball to the MVP. That I just dropped it to Michael, and you flushed it. I mean, that was like, I'm glad this is recorded, because that was wow. That was awesome, Antoine. Thank you. Really cool stuff there. How do you do that, Antoine? How do you get to know and then try to shift the young people you're working with?
Helen said it earlier. It all starts with questions. It all starts with questions. And that's what young people don't hear. Everybody's telling them what to do. Nobody's asking them what they want to do. If we know what they want to do, then we have the tools to give them to be successful. And Helen's mentioned it 2 or 3 times, and I kind of smile. There is a analogy that I use with kids. It's the like, love, passion. I talk about like, love, and passion. We all like things, then we don't like things. We all love things, then we don't love things. But when we find that one thing that we're passionate about, it is what drives you. It is what wakes you up. It is what keeps you going every day. And me work with young people, that is my passion, because of all this conversation. This is where they need to be and the things that they're going to go through. And I want to be able to provide them with the tools to prepare them to deal with these things, so that they're not brick walls that they run into. They're just hurdles that they jump over.
Woo! We dropped the mic right there, man. Drop that. Antoine, awesome stuff, man. Awesome stuff. We're blessed that you joined us today. All right, we're going to one of my favorite people, originally from Garden City, lives locally here in Mooresville, North Carolina. Another Yankee invading the South. Chuck McAllister. What do you got for us, Chuck?
Good morning, Matt. Sorry about that. I was on mute.
Okay.
Helen, thank you so much for the time this morning. Yeah, I'm a Yankee just like Matt, but I'm from the right side of the tracks, as I like to say. But anyway, I have more of a comment and maybe a question as well. I'm an independent sales person. I don't work for a corporation, so to speak. So listening to you all talk about, cleaning the bathrooms and stuff like that, which I am, I do it all. I do from the front end to the back end and everything in between. But you being in the public eye and being out and people listen to you on a daily basis, one of the things I always like to understand is certain people's philosophy about being a servant leader. And obviously, you being in the public eye, you probably have to lead by example a lot of times. So I just would love to hear what your thought process is on being a servant leader and how that applies to what you do on a daily basis.
Being an example is just how I choose to live for myself. And as I choose what I think is best for myself, I kind of exude that for others. So I'm very aware of people that are paying attention to what I say, and but it's who I am. What works best for me is when I open up that microphone, I am my authentic self. I start every show with today is a new day. Today is not like yesterday or tomorrow. It'll never be another day like today. So make the best of this day. And then I end it with remember to choose kindness, be safe, and be well. So everything in between the beginning and the end of my show is reflective of who I am as a person. So I think you mentioned something about leading by example. And when you choose to live your life fully, believing in yourself, believing in a higher power, believing that what you do and how you feel and how you show up can impact the world in a positive way, that is the example. And we can all do that. I think it was a couple of days ago. No, it's coming up September 11th. There's a campaign to pay it forward all the way through to September 11th as a way to honor the people that lost their lives in the 9/11 attacks. So I thought to myself, I was like, that's a great thing to just do every day. If every day we choose one little fraction of kindness towards someone else and even towards ourselves, because I would be willing to say that there are times when everybody on this call is not kind to themselves, that it can begin to shift things bit by bit. It's the micro chipping away at things that can really make a big difference when we just choose to be kind. And I know.
Helen, I think you froze up again. Okay.
Oh.
Helen, one thing that you touched on there, I have a hard time sometimes is being kind to myself, compassionate. I'll be maybe more forgiving of somebody else than I am myself. And I make a mistake and I beat myself up. And then I think, who the heck do I think I am that I can't make a mistake? Tell me how you're kind to yourself.
I pay attention to the thoughts that I have. I do have those Helen, you're an idiot thoughts from time to time. And then I stop and I'm like, no, you're not. Talk to yourself about all the great things that you are as well, because then you begin to share those with other people. They begin to be outward. And so it's really minding my thoughts is the first place that I go to be kind to myself. Then, I might buy myself a nice present every now and then too.
Well, yeah, or drop into Starbucks, which is where I saw you last on the streets of Manhattan, right?
Yes.
Coming out in your Penn Station, just boom, I turned the corner. There's Helen. I like, boom. It was like we were back in school.
I know.
Oh, that was awesome. Terry Lyons from Boston, you traitor. I can't believe you live in Boston and you like the Red Sox and the Celtics and all the other Boston teams. Terry Lyons, we're winding now. We have 7 minutes. I'll give you a minute to make a comment or ask Helen a question.
Yeah, thanks, Helen, for being on. I think we've done a few of these calls, and this has sparked a lot of different and interesting topics. The one thing I would share, and by background, I used to work at the National Basketball Association before I moved up here to Boston. And Matt, I know you like the Celtic style of play, by the way. I found, and I was lucky enough to be intern and promoted through the years. I found that the best thing with working with young people was really two things. One was to do your best to explain to them what the job was. And two, the lead by example thing is of course important, but to give them confidence in that. We used to say, listen, you have a whole year to learn stuff where you don't have to worry. Try not to make the same mistake twice, but don't worry about it. Okay, a year from now, when you're attending your second NBA All-Star game or your eighth NBA Finals game, you'll be a lot better and you'll feel a lot more comfortable. And keep coming with those questions. So I think as managers that a lot of us are, you have to set up an atmosphere of comfort. Now, there was a lot of pressure, and we try to take that pressure on as opposed to the first or second year people. But I think it's setting a tone in terms of allowing people to learn and make mistakes in their first year. And that then leads to what we've talked about, getting a passion for your job, passion for the game, whether you're Xeroxing game notes and final box scores, a lot of it's not real glamorous too. We used to teach them that right from the get-go. But I think that's an important aspect as we bring people along. And Helen, maybe a quick comment on that. It's got to be ridiculously competitive in the radio, in entertainment industry.
It is competitive. And, the thing that I keep in mind is someone taught me something. Someone took time with me. I've been a part of many mentorships. I coach young talent. And like to this day, some of my closest friends are 30 and under because I'm constantly learning from them. I'm also constantly sharing what I've learned with them so that they can take that knowledge and grow. It's funny. I used to people that were always afraid to have their job taken by somebody else. I'm like, I will teach you my job so you can't take it. I want you to be able to take my job. I want to equip you with that. And so you're right. I think it's like the part of asking questions and finding out what they're passionate about, but also letting them understand that you were once in their shoes. I started somewhere. I started at WCHL in Chapel Hill. I didn't know anything, nothing. And I had a program director who taught me which buttons to push, who taught me the important things to say before, so all of those things that I got, I passed them to other people.
Helen, we've got 4 minutes. There's some topics we didn't get to. We might have to have you back.
I'd love to.
Yeah, this is awesome. And I'm really proud of the turnout. You drew a good crowd. The day after Labor Day, we got up to 30 people. We're at 28 crowds. The group stuck together. I think this is one of the most diverse groups we have. Men, women, people of color, some different ages. This is really awesome. If you could leave us with one thought or comment, what would it be? All right, you froze again. So one thing I would encourage people to do is to connect with Helen. I know she's on LinkedIn, and there you are. You're
Okay,
back.
there we go. Okay, yeah. So believe in yourself. Believe in what it is that you're doing. Ask questions. No? Okay. When you were filled,
froze up a couple times.
okay, sorry. When you are filled with love and joy for yourself, you can share that with others. Don't be afraid. Number one. Fear is only on the inside. There is no such thing as fear on the outside. Share your knowledge, share your passions, share whatever it is that you have with the people that you can share it with. And it will come back to you in so many different ways. Whether that is like down the line, generations in your family later, or to a kid around the street, or a business in your community. Every time you put something forward that is good and positive, it makes the world a better place. So let's all do that.
That reminds me of a book called The Go-Giver, which is along those lines. Helen, how do people find you? And as importantly, I'm assuming with the way things are nowadays, we can listen to you on the radio through the internet. So how do we listen to you on the radio?
So you can find me on the iHeartRadio app, and the station is 106.7 Light, L-I-T-E, FM in New York, or you can go to lightfm.com, LITEFM.com. I'm on all the social media platforms as Helen R. Little, and that's Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm most active on Instagram. I'm on TikTok, but I'm not active on TikTok. And LinkedIn, I am also active on LinkedIn. And there was email. If you want, my website is helenlittle.com, easy to remember. And my email address is helenlittle.com@gmail.com. And if you want, I can type it in the chat as well.
Okay, that'd be nice. It is 9:00. I always say we will start on time, end on time, if not early. Helen, I could go on and on. This was really cool. I have so many more questions, so many more topics I wanted to touch. Your perspective is unique and good for this audience. We need to hear that from people like yourself, successful women, successful Black women, and you've been really gracious with your time. You're traveling. You're in the airport. Thank you so much. You have a safe trip.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being on. We will be back here the first Tuesday of next month at 8 a.m. And the guest is TBA. And look forward to you all coming back. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
You're the best.